He sits at the edge of the playground, not because he has no one, but because something else is happening inside him. The swings in the background move like slow planets, drifting in and out of his sight. Children's voices rise and crash like waves, filling the air with noise and motion. But he is not retreating from it. He is listening, not listening in order to reply, not listening in order to compete. He listens to understand. Inside his silence exists an entire world, a life rich with small rituals, private experiments, subtle observations, and long questions no one has ever asked him. While the rest measure presence by how fast someone speaks or how loud they are, the quiet child reveals another truth. Quiet is not empty. Quiet is deep. Quiet is a reservoir. From the outside, silence looks like absence. From the inside, it feels like cultivation. And this gap between appearance and reality is where nearly all our misunderstanding about quiet children begins. Why does a child choose silence? Sometimes it's temperament. Some are simply born with nervous systems that crave less stimulation. Stillness is where they breathe. Others turn to silence for protection. When a home punishes honesty or a classroom rewards only speed, the young learn that retreat is safer than expression. But silence is rarely just one thing. The quiet child often lives with a paradox. They may long for connection but hesitate at the rituals the world demands. They may be social in their own way, but cautious in the way society expects social life to unfold. While others rush to be noticed, the quiet kid notices. They see who gets ignored. They feel the tiny sting when a teacher's tone changes after a wrong answer. They witness the micro moments of exclusion that pass unseen by everyone else. Listening is their craft. Stillness is their skill. They collect impressions like stones, smooth, sharp, colorful, heavy, and carry them inside. Later, those stones become art, poetry, inventions, or music. Think of the poets who began not as talkers, but as watchers. Think of the scientists who first stood back, quietly watching patterns others rushed past. Their silence was not a weakness. It was training. In stillness, they gathered the nuances that noise can never capture. And yet, silence is fragile. It doesn't always survive in a world that prizes volume and performance. The quiet child often absorbs a single poisonous message: you must be louder to be loved. So they adapt. Some put on masks. They copy the energy of extroverts. They memorize the lines. They play along with scripts that don't belong to them. But masking is exhausting. It eats at the warmth of their inner world until what was once alive begins to grow cold. Others withdraw even further, convinced the world will never slow down enough for them to enter. What started as protection becomes a lifelong negotiation between their true self and the expectations pressing in on them. Quiet children are also misread. Adults often call them easy. Teachers relax around them. Parents assume they don't need as much. But easy is not the same as nurtured, because attention, in many families and schools, is given to the loudest. The one who shouts gets noticed. The one who whispers waits. And those waits add up. They don't vanish. They stack like invisible debts inside the heart. Over time, the quiet child begins to believe something dangerous, that their needs are optional, that their voice is extra, that their presence is inconvenient. This is when silence begins to curl inward. What was once a chapel of reflection becomes a prison of self-erasure. They rehearse what they want to say only to decide against it. They start to speak in apologies before they even begin their sentences. Sorry. I don't mean to bother. Their language shrinks before it even takes shape. Over time, the apology stops being a phrase. It becomes an identity, a permanent reflex, a way of surviving under the weight of being unseen. And yet even within that, Silence holds a strange kind of power. When the quiet child does finally speak, people notice. Their words land with weight. They are like rare coins, carried carefully, spent deliberately. Because they are rare, they are remembered. But being heard is not the same as being understood. The quiet kid's words often come layered, indirect, symbolic, or slow. In a culture addicted to quick replies and instant comments, their speech can be missed, brushed aside, or rushed past. So they compress themselves. They learn to shrink their words, to speed up their thoughts, to fit the tempo of the group. But in doing so, the richness of their inner life risks suffocation. Most of us make the same mistake. We confuse silence with passivity. We assume stillness means absence. We think that if someone doesn't speak quickly, they have nothing to say. But silence is not absence. Silence is patience. Silence holds back the flood of instant judgment. Silence gives complexity room to breathe. Imagine if we treated the quiet kid's rhythm as valuable instead of defective. Imagine a classroom where the first 10 seconds of silence were intentional, where space was created for the slow thinker to gather their words. Imagine meetings designed not just for speed, but for depth. Because most of our social structures, classrooms, offices, even friendships, are designed for immediacy, not for reflection. And the quiet child is often living in a world built against their rhythm. The cost of this misfit is high. Quiet children grow up believing their rhythm is wrong, that their silence is a weakness, that their depth is something to hide. But the truth is different. Silence is not a flaw. Silence is a different kind of presence, a deeper presence, one that sees what noise cannot. And this is only the beginning of the story, because the quiet kid's silence is not just about childhood. It grows, it changes, it follows them into adolescence, into adulthood, into every relationship and every room they enter. But before we get there, we need to sit with this truth. The quiet child is not broken. They are not empty. They are not invisible. Their silence is not the absence of thought. It is the furnace of thought. It is the ground where everything else begins. But what most people don't realize is that being quiet isn't just about not talking. For the quiet kid, silence is a shield, a weapon, and sometimes a burden. While the loud ones fight for attention, the quiet one notices everything. They see the twitch in someone's eyebrow when they're lying. They catch the subtle tremor in a friend's voice when they're hiding pain. They notice the hesitation in footsteps, the fake laughter, the tension in the air before anyone else can. That's the gift of silence. It sharpens your perception. Psychologists often point out that people who talk less tend to listen more. But it's deeper than that. The quiet kid isn't just listening to words. They're reading the energy in the room, the emotional undercurrents, the things left unsaid. While others waste time filling space with noise, the quiet kid is decoding reality. And that changes everything about how they move through life. Think about it. When you're quiet, people underestimate you. They assume you're shy, nervous, or even weak. But underestimation is power, because the moment people think you're harmless, they reveal their true selves around you. They drop their guard. They speak carelessly. They expose their secrets. And the quiet kid remembers. This is why silence often feels uncomfortable to others. Most people can't stand it. They rush to fill it with small talk, jokes, or anything to avoid the stillness. But the quiet kid embraces that stillness. They can sit in silence without panicking. And that patience becomes a mirror that forces others to face themselves. And here's the paradox. While silence protects them, it also isolates them. Many quiet kids grow up misunderstood. Teachers label them withdrawn. Parents think something's wrong. Classmates project their own insecurities onto them, calling them weird, awkward, or antisocial. But behind that silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. It's the discipline of knowing you don't have to prove yourself with every word. Quiet kids develop an inner world so rich it makes the outer world look dull in comparison. They replay conversations in their head, analyze every detail, and create vivid imaginations that sometimes feel more real than reality. But there's a darker side too, because being constantly overlooked and misunderstood can lead to loneliness. The quiet kid starts believing their silence is a curse, not a gift. They wonder if something is wrong with them. They watch others bond easily over shallow conversations and feel like outsiders in their own world. This is where psychology gives us insight. Many quiet kids lean toward introversion, but introversion isn't about hating people. It's about where energy is gained and lost. For the quiet kid, constant socializing drains them. Noise, chatter, and forced small talk leave them feeling empty. Solitude, on the other hand, recharges them. Their silence isn't avoidance, it's survival. And yet, society often misreads this survival instinct as arrogance. Why don't you talk more? Why are you always so serious? You think you're better than everyone else? No. The quiet kid doesn't think they're above anyone. They just don't see the point of speaking without meaning. That's the unspoken code of the quiet mind. If it's not worth saying, it's better left unsaid. But silence doesn't always equal safety. Sometimes it backfires. Bullies often target the quiet ones because they seem defenseless. The silence that makes them powerful observers also makes them easy scapegoats. And when they do finally speak, their words carry a weight that shocks everyone, because silence makes every sentence feel amplified. It's like holding back a storm. The longer the silence, the heavier the thunder when it finally breaks. This duality, power and vulnerability, is what shapes the psychology of a quiet kid. They learn to live in the background, not because they want to disappear, but because the background gives them perspective. From the shadows, they see patterns others miss. They learn patience. They learn timing. They learn that sometimes the most dangerous move is to do nothing. And that's what makes them unpredictable. Because while everyone else is busy showing off, the quiet kid is storing energy. While others reveal themselves, the quiet kid gathers information. And when the time finally comes to act, they move with a precision that feels almost surgical. This is why so many writers, thinkers, inventors, and even leaders were once the quiet kid. They weren't loud in the room, but they were loud in the world. Their silence became the foundation for something greater: clarity, vision, and depth. But here's the haunting truth. Not all quiet kids find that path. Some remain trapped in their silence, crushed by misunderstanding and isolation. They retreat so deeply into themselves that they forget how to connect. Their silence becomes a prison instead of a sanctuary. And that's the line every quiet kid walks. The thin boundary between turning silence into strength or into suffering. The real question is, how does a quiet kid survive in a world that worships noise? But here's the thing about quiet kids. The world underestimates them. People assume silence means weakness, when in reality, silence is often a strategy. The quiet kid learns early on that speaking too much gives others power over you. Words can be twisted, mocked, or dismissed. But silence? Silence is unshakable. You can't argue with it, you can't distort it, you can't easily attack it. It forces people to project their own thoughts onto you. And that's the secret. A quiet kid holds a mirror up to the world. Everyone thinks they know what's going on in their head, but in truth, they only see a reflection of themselves. Some project kindness, some project threat, some project mystery. But the quiet kid remains the same, unreadable. This unreadability is power. In psychology, it's known as the blank screen effect. People fill in the blanks when someone doesn't reveal much. They build stories, fears, or fantasies in the silence. And so, the quiet kid becomes more than just themselves. They become a canvas for the imaginations of everyone else. And while the world is busy guessing, the quiet kid is busy watching. Observation becomes their weapon. By staying silent, they pick up details others miss. The nervous twitch in someone's hand, the fake smile masking insecurity, the cruel tone that goes unnoticed in a noisy crowd. Every secret, every weakness, every subtle detail, the quiet kid collects it. And here's the dark truth. Knowledge is power. The one who notices is always 2 steps ahead. But power isn't the only thing silence brings. It also brings isolation. Because while the quiet kid sees everything, not everyone sees them. They walk through the halls invisible, forgotten, misunderstood. They become ghosts in their own lives. And this invisibility can be both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it protects them from unnecessary drama, fake friendships, and the shallow noise of the crowd. On the other, it can leave them starving for recognition, for someone who truly sees them without judgment. This is the paradox of the quiet kid. To survive, they hide. But in hiding, they risk losing themselves. Psychologists talk about the dangers of repression, when emotions are pushed down, unexpressed, never voiced. Over time, they don't just disappear. They grow roots. They turn into anxiety, depression, or explosive anger. The quiet kid may look calm on the outside, but inside, there can be storms no one else will ever hear. And this is why so many people misunderstand them. Some think they're harmless. Others think they're dangerous. But the truth is more complex. They're human. They're navigating a world that doesn't always have room for silence, trying to find meaning in a noise-dominated culture. Yet within this struggle lies transformation, because silence is not only a shield, it can also be a forge. In the quiet, creativity grows. Writers, musicians, thinkers, philosophers, so many of them were once the quiet kid. Retreating into imagination when the outside world felt overwhelming, silence gave them space to create worlds no one else could see. In the quiet, resilience grows. When you don't rely on constant validation, you learn to hold yourself up. The quiet kid learns to be their own companion, their own comfort, their own strength. And in the quiet, clarity grows. While others are swept up in chaos, the quiet kid steps back, reflects, and notices what truly matters. They see through the lies, the distractions, the illusions. Their silence cuts through the noise. That's why history remembers many quiet kids not as background characters, but as the ones who eventually reshaped the world. Thinkers like Newton, writers like Kafka, inventors, artists, visionaries, people who didn't shout for attention, but let their ideas, their creations, and their depth speak louder than words ever could. So maybe the psychology of a quiet kid isn't about weakness at all. Maybe it's about potential. Potential that most people never bother to see. Because here's the truth. The quiet kid you overlook today might be the one who writes the book you'll one day quote. The quiet kid you dismiss as strange might be the one who creates the invention that changes your life. The quiet kid you mock for not fitting in might be the one who proves years later that they never needed to. And if you were, or still are, that quiet kid, understand this. Your silence is not empty. It is full of meaning. It holds power, creativity, and strength. You don't have to become louder to matter. You only need to use your silence wisely, to watch, to think, to create, to grow. The world may never fully understand you. And maybe that's the point. Because silence itself is a language only a few ever bother to learn. So the psychology of the quiet kid is not about being less. It's about being different, not broken, not weak, not invisible, but someone who carries depth in a shallow world, someone who listens when others only talk, someone who sees when others are blind, and maybe that's the rarest kind of strength. If you found this video powerful, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps keep these ideas alive and brings more people into the conversation, because the world may try to silence quiet voices, but together we can make sure they're finally heard.